Welcome to Leadership Reimagined on True Chat, where game-changing conversations are reshaping the world of work. Here's your host, Janis Ellig.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Janis Ellig, the CEO and founder of Ellig Group, Executive Search Advisors, where we are reimagining search. During this holiday season, I'm particularly delighted to welcome Richard Davis, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for more than a decade. Today, Richard is CEO of Make-A-Wish, an organization that grants a child's wish every 24 minutes, and where he is helping to change the lives of more than 330,000 critically ill children since the first wish was granted in 1980. This is a new role for Richard because he started his life as a teller, and since 1993 has been a banker at legacy companies of U.S. Bank. Rising through the ranks, Richard became CEO in 2006 and board chair in 2007 of U.S. Bank, the fifth largest U.S. commercial bank, headquartered in Minneapolis with over 70,000 employees and more than $460 billion in assets, and to work at an organization led by Richard Davis, a CEO chairman, selected by American Banker as Banker of the Year in 2010. Richard, you have impacted so many lives and are today doing it again, yet in another highly impactful way. Thank you, Richard, and welcome. We have so much to talk about, so let's get started.
Thank you, Janis. I'm delighted to be here.
So when you decided to step down from U.S. Bank in 2018, it was very thoughtful, it was planned out, and you noted you were ready to turn over the reins to your successor. And though you were not sure of your next chapter, you said it would be a mission-driven organization, and you would know it when you saw it. And as the story goes, you were playing putt-putt with your grandkids when the Make-A-Wish opportunity presented itself, and immediately you knew it was your next calling. Why?
So, Janis, the journey began about 2014, years before I retired from the bank, thinking that at the 10-year mark, it would be the appropriate time to seek a successor. I knew that 10 years was about the right amount of time for any good leader to run an organization that big, and I got through 11, so weren't quite perfectly choreographed. But I also knew that at that time, if I was allowed, willing enough to be healthy and capable, that I would love to do one more thing, and I'll call it first derivative, life-changing. But I didn't limit to what that could be, and I wasn't certain what would be in the environment when I was finally available. So I actually retired from the bank in 2018 without knowing where it would be, because I needed it to be authentic, completely 100% of everything I had to give to the bank before I finished, and then open myself up to the possibilities. In the months that followed, there were a number of opportunities that came along, many that were attractive, and each had a different opportunity of impact that I was seeking. My wife of 41 years and I agreed that no matter where the job was, we would gladly relocate there as our next journey. So it didn't matter where the headquarters was. There were 3 I was working on, and at this particular moment in August of that year, we were celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary with all of our 6 kids and 6 grandkids together, having a wonderful time, basically out in Yarmouth, which is across from Martha's Vineyard. What I didn't know is that on the beaches of Yarmouth, you either putt-putt golf or you putt-putt golf. So on the particular day, my entire family was in the city for exactly 24 hours, where everybody crossed over at the same time. And that was the morning we all went out. And at, I think, the 5th hole, I got a note from the search firm, and the note said, "Don't read this until you're ready. I think this is the one." So immediately I read it. My wife looked at it. Her eyes welled up. My heart dropped. We brought everybody over in one moment from wherever they were on the golf course to read it. Everybody gleefully agreed this was it, and it was Make-A-Wish. So it was more than serendipity. It was quite profound. And it is exactly what I could have choreographed if I had put it together that way.
And it hit you. It was just Make-A-Wish. You knew enough about Make-A-Wish that this was the critically ill children. Their mission was what resonated with you, Richard? The
mission did, and I think the brand. I'm still a brand person at heart, and I do believe that not-for-profits should manage more by brand than by philanthropy. And so I immediately believed that the intersection of my, we'll call it Rolodex, would highest and best support would come from organizations with great brands where I could tie them with others. And Make-A-Wish I'm sure has that best brand. I was sure at that moment, I'm sure now, of perhaps any other not-for-profit you could hope for at this point in time in America.
It's amazing because you at U.S. Bank you were always mission-driven in how you approached your clients, engaged with the communities, that as
Right.
U.S. Bank did, you supported communities dramatically. And you were also very involved with a lot of not-for-profits while you were running the bank. You had the Mayo Clinic, you had the National Red Cross, you had Minnesota Art Institute, you had Twin Cities, United Way, University of San Diego, right, where you went to school.
Sure.
You were also instrumental in starting Step Up, a Twin Cities program that gave more than 18,000 distinguished teenagers their first professional summer jobs. And you also served on the Twin Cities YMCA, a not-for-profit organization that we both share a commitment
That's right.
to, right? Mine with the YMCA of New York City, and now I'm on the National YMCA board. So that we share
We
that.
do.
But Make-A-Wish seems to now be your next chapter. But what's different about it in leading Make-A-Wish versus these other not-for-profits that you've been very involved in?
Let's start by comparing it to the bank. When I said earlier, first derivative, I think the bank and all banks are mission-driven because we actually are helping people get through their lives more swiftly and more successfully. And second to your physical well-being with the doctor coming in to diagnose you, your physical well-being is the other thing that most people need help with. I felt we were on a real mission to be the best at it and to change people's lives favorably. I call that second derivative. You can live without any one bank. You just need to have as partner. Make-A-Wish is first derivative. We're changing lives. And many not-for-profits are derivatives of some form of keeping people alive or giving them their hope and their well-being back to them. And so I was motivated by Make-A-Wish, particularly because I think that it's a misunderstood story and one that when told more clearly by people who are first-hand knowledgeable, it could change many, many more lives. And so, Janis, I was compelled, first of all, by any not-for-profit because it really is life-changing and it's not noble, it's necessary. But I particularly like Make-A-Wish because I think it has a story to be told. And when the story is told, it resonates. And with that, we can take many, many more lives and change the futures of kids.
So in banking, you are helping to make people financially
Right.
well off and well-being, right?
Correct.
And here it's really helping to make a wish for children and giving them hope because they're critically ill.
That's correct.
Right. And so you have 40,000 volunteers
Right.
and a staff of 1,200. How do you motivate them? And then how does that win the hearts and the minds of donors to give? And it is a privilege to give, and this is the holiday season.
Well, let me start with the fact that not-for-profit is misunderstood in America.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps one of the derivatives of this role for me, having had my last job, is I'm on a crusade to change that. Not-for-profit shouldn't be second-class citizenry in America, and it is. It starts with a bad phrase. Not for anything is just a really bad title. And people will tell you that they believe that not-for-profit is uniquely different than for-profit and therefore leave those practices behind. There's nothing different about it. Good business is good business. The mission is different and the shareholders are different, but they're just as important. Every community in America needs to realize that thank you for the public service, thank you for the private organizations, thank you for the business, thank you for the schools, thank you for the hospitals. But without the not-for-profit, think of the stitching between the fabric. There wouldn't be a community. And not-for-profits need a louder voice. So I start there because I do believe that any not-for-profit, once you get closer to it, and I was on 11 boards, 11 times of not-for-profits, everything I've learned in this interview came from the last 12 months running it, not being a board member. It's uniquely different. So first of all, the mission sells itself. The second piece is data and information drive better outcomes. And so in the last year, we brought a lot of information about Make-A-Wish into the fore. We really hadn't done a full study or a survey in the 40-year history of the organization. We found that 44% of Americans, when surveyed, still believed it to be the last wish of a dying child. And nobody wants to be on part of a bucket list for a child, and we aren't either. But it's an important distinction because when you find out it's critically ill children who become eligible by a certain set of diagnosis that makes them critically ill and perhaps at the risk of losing their life, when that happens as a parent, the first thing you do is go into the shock. Then you find the best caregiver, you find the best medicine, you find the best partners, you bring in your family, you bring in your faith. But we bring in the hope. You see, we're that last element where a child can wish for anything they want. It's called the one true wish. Whatever they want, we will accomplish that wish. And what that does, Janis, is it gives that child at that moment something to look forward to. There's a phrase we all know it to be often true, which is the anticipation is greater than the event. In this case, they're both great. But a child in many cases with a wish being granted gets first to go through the discovery of anything they want. And then when they make that decision, they get to look forward to it. And in some cases, it actually gets them through the critical therapies they need to stay alive. Family after family will say, my little Richard, my little Janis would not have finished the chemo or the therapies or the horrible, horrible treatments if they didn't have this to look forward to. And therefore, they count the wish as part of the reason they're alive. Or the wish itself, for reasons that many people struggle to put into words, is better than medicine and did cause them to stay alive. Now, we don't measure ourselves by life or death, but we do measure ourselves by impact. And every family, whether the child is still alive today or the child did not pass through childhood, they are telling us again and again, after the diagnosis, this was singularly the best thing that ever happened to our life, to our child, and to our family. And by the way, if I can help teach, 71% of our children live to adulthood. So it's quite remarkably different than people think. And so I'll close there because if that resonates with you, you're thinking, God, I loved thinking you were helping dying children. That's noble and that's wonderful. Keep it up, but I'm not necessarily want to be a part of that. But if you're telling me that your incidence of a wish creates hope and keeps people either alive longer, no matter what, a better life experience and lasts forever, count me in. How can I play? And so this is really one of my first goals, is to take a less understood brand that's brilliant at its highest level, no matter how you understand it, and get you to love it on purpose for the right reasons, and then get you to activate with it.
That's a remarkable statistic, the 71% live to adulthood. Yeah. And if it's your child,
every child is different. Yeah. Each wish is local. And I will close this wonderful segment. Thank you for the chance to share this. Each child has a different starting point. There are many children who are born with some critical illness, born with it, and then the families are working through those moments. And when the child becomes about 3, they can be eligible because we need a child to have the neurology to look forward to a wish and have the impacts that creates.
Right.
A 1-year-old, not so much.
Right.
On the other hand, there are certain children, anywhere up until 18 years old, that all of a sudden fall ill. The diagnosis is very, very scary, and all of a sudden their lives are upside down. Either way, we come in at the right moment and introduce that hope and then create outcomes that are unique.
So what do you think the number can be? You have 333,000 that you've impacted to date. What can the number be in 5 years from now? What's the impact that you want to make?
It's an excellent question. First of all, while the numbers sound big, we never want to lose track that every one, and you already said it, is one kid, one family. They're all unique stories. Our best estimates, by granting about 16,000 wishes a year, we believe based on the inclusion of all children in the United States, it's probably 50%. So we're reaching half of the children. And you say, well, why wouldn't you reach all of them? And let me give an example. If my son were affected with one of these maladies, and his doctor believed incorrectly that it was a last wish for a dying child, I'll never hear of Make-A-Wish because a doctor will never volunteer it, thinking that they're giving up on my child. If the doctor understands it, but my wife and I don't, and he or she makes the recommendation, we're going to hate them for giving up on our kid. So both parties have to be in that 56% that know it to be life-changing. And so until we can reframe the understanding, we're going to be unable to get to all of the children because the referrals come from the hospitals, the doctors, the oncologists, or the families. And until we get people to understand what it's about, there'll be kids out there unwittingly not being involved in the wish because somebody in their life doesn't know it to be that important.
So you told me you were on a 17-day tour around the country.
Right.
And are you trying to then get to these hospitals, get to these clinics, get to these, because you have local chapters, right?
Great question. 60 chapters across the U.S., Puerto Rico, and Guam. There's also 39 countries that do Make-A-Wish as part of an adjunct to the Make-A-Wish America. I'm on this 70-day trip. I just came on the train from Stanford with the WWE partners who are remarkable supporters. Tomorrow morning, we start with the NFL, who are working on a number of new ideas. We move on to Meredith Corporation and People Magazine and Parents Magazine. And we end the day tomorrow with Macy's and helping us with the Believe campaign. So my visits are more for the sponsors and for the storytelling and for the chapter boards and management teams. The medical decisions, and the medical advice comes from our national medical advisory team of pediatric oncologists who work with the hospitals across the country. So mine is to deal with the child once they're eligible, once they come into our life, make a wish, and my team work to make those wishes come true and to grant them all the way through and to make them alumni of a very special group of people.
How can our audience help? How can we help this brand get out there? How can we get more children doctors with the audience help to get Make-A-Wish, every child to know that Make-A-Wish, is there for them and their families?
Thank you. The first would be to tell the story more widely and even say you were surprised if you were to hear that it's an organization for critically ill, not for terminally ill children. The second one is to be engaged. We will do on any chapter anywhere from 100 to 1,200 wishes a year. Each of the chapters are quite visible, online, and we need volunteers to not only help discover the wish, but help to procure all the support that comes with it, cash and in kind, and then to be there to execute the wish and then to celebrate the wish. Example after example, where ordinary people become extraordinary when they find out that there's a role for them to play in a wish. Think of an example of a child his wish is a treehouse. And we discovered that the treehouse becomes clear in the community that he or she lives. And 5, not 1, but 5 contractors read about it, want to work together for the first time ever, and they're going to build the most amazing treehouse you've ever seen. Think about New Hampshire, where in the state of New Hampshire, every police department insists on an escort, a police escort for every child who's flying away to a wish. Every kid in New Hampshire gets a police escort from their home to the airport when they go away on a wish. And consider the number of people at the airport when American Airlines Flight 1705 is boarding to Orlando, and they say, ladies and gentlemen, Richard, his sister Janis, and his mom and dad are going off to Orlando to Disney World. They're with us today. Let's give it up for Wish Kid Richard, and everybody starts clapping. And then the story in this one case went on that as the applause occurred, they boarded the flight. And as they got onto the flight, the first class had already boarded. In the matter of minutes, 4 people, randomly, not known to each other, agreed, gave their seats to the family, and walked to the back of the plane. And so there's just all these, and I'm telling you, the anticipation is as great as the wish. And the engagement in the wish process is unwittingly the most wonderful thing you can do with your time in life, even when you didn't expect it.
Oh, this is so heartwarming.
That's how you help.
This is
it's
so
wonderful.
Heartwarming. Yeah. We should put this across all newspapers during the holiday season. Yeah. I just saw Terry Lundgren today, former CEO of Macy's. So I'm sure he's good. Yeah, I know. Right. Macy's doing such great work with you guys. So I just want to take a moment to remind our audience that we are speaking with Richard Davis, and our topic today is a powerful, persuasive CEO who's gone from banking to making children's wishes come true. With Richard Davis, CEO of Make-A-Wish, the topics we cover, like today's, are all current, and a new topic with a new game changer is released on the 3rd Thursday of every month. This is a great way to stay current. So now let's return to Richard Davis, CEO of Make-A-Wish. Richard, I think the audience would also like to know a little bit about how you got to where you are today, and interested in the lessons you learned growing up, which was in San Diego, California. Is that right?
Yeah, LA.
From your parents and working as a professional actor and singer, including...
You're going to bring that up, are you?
Yeah, I am, including a production that you were in Wizard of Oz. And I think your acting started because you followed your sister, right?
Right.
Who was an aspiring actress on auditions. And at 18, you did start working as a teller in a bank to pay your way through college. And you also had a dream in the Air Force Academy. So tell us about these early days in your life to where you are today.
I don't think my story is that interesting, but what's compelling about it as I look back on it is both parents ran the gamut of really philanthropy and engagement. My father was very, very pragmatic, very, very intellectual. He was a truck driver, 8th grade educated, but smartest man I think I've ever known. My mother was absolutely the nicest human being I've ever met, and I've never going to meet anybody nicer. And they give you the left and the right brain along the way. The very short foray into acting, I was 7 years old. My sister was a child actress in Hollywood, and we were really actually near in LA. And so she was quite successful, and I was just always hanging around, being part of whatever audition she was at. I was a latchkey kid before there was a phrase. And at a particular Wizard of Oz tryout for a Christmas production at the Pantages in Los Angeles, which included Connie Stevens and Ray Bolger, names that only a few of us would understand, I was wandering the hallways, bored, and as usual, nothing to do. And I auditioned because they said, "Hey, kid, are you here?" And I could sing and I could do a soft shoe because I'd seen it forever. And I got the part. The first time my sister ever got shut out, she wasn't a Munchkin or a Lollipop Guild or a Lullaby League. And so I got this role and I didn't like it. I did it well, I think. My mother was very excited. My dad was very unexcited, and they debated it, and I never did it again.
That was it, huh?
But when you can, at 7 years old, walk into a room and audition in front of a bunch of people you've never met, it's not a bad starting point as it relates to getting in front of people and feeling comfortable in whatever situation. But more germane to that is I believe that my parents were both well ahead of their time by believing in the philanthropy. We were tithers at church, which was really hard to be. I know my mom and dad were philanthropists at what level they could afford to be in many, many different charities. And they spent a lot of their time making sure that my sister and I were imbued with that. They were born in the teens, so they were very, very old compared to most of our parents' friends. And without them being around now for over 30 years, each of them, they're more powerful to me today than they were when they were alive. Because I don't sit there and think, what would they do? But I do think, would they be pleased with this outcome? And does this support the kind of views that they had back when? So I would say of all the things I accomplished at the bank, I'm quite sure they'd be much more proud of the little bit of things I've done so far at Make-A-Wish because it was more aligned with the kind of beliefs they set us up for. And little did I know, I was practicing for that all along. I just didn't know what it would be.
And what led you into banking? I mean, I know to pay for college, you became a teller at 18.
Yeah, well, you brought it up. So I was in the Air Force Academy. I was accepted. And I was young. I was a year younger than most. And so I just turned 17. And that particular year, they added women to the 4 academies. That means little to anyone except that it takes 2 years to cultivate a class. You have to get a Congress or senatorial approval. You have to go through all these steps. And so it made no sense that they would reduce the class I was about to begin because they had no women for that class. But they did. And because I was young, they said, well, we're guaranteeing you the next year. We had no money. And I had no future. And at 17, I had just graduated college. And literally, mine was a product of a circumstance where I had to go to work to pay for school. I went to 8 years of night school, never went to day school, which, by the way, I think is quite a good reason why I believe my business sense, because I was taught by adjunct professors who were working during the day. I never got the traditional education. I'm good with that. But I never got to go to the Air Force Academy because I couldn't wait that year. It was literally too expensive and I didn't have the capacity to wait. So banking was a product of convenience. And then I loved it because it was cool. It was help people get through life. I was pretty good at it. And the companies I worked for took very good care of us long before they were supposed to, mentored, developed, and then celebrated success. So I could have hoped for a better career in my life. And I don't regret any of the outcomes. As you get older, you realize that everything has a good reason. And so when Make-A-Wish came up that day on the putt-putt golf course, I didn't have to think a second thought. This was part of the destiny that I just didn't have a name for until it showed up.
So what were the leadership lessons you learned along the way? And I know you were very strong about leadership at U.S. Bank.
2 things to that answer. One is it's what you do for a living. And for banking, I had a phrase that everyone will remember, that if your grandmother shouldn't have it, we shouldn't sell it. Mm-hmm. And my joke was, I didn't pick your parents because not everyone likes their parents, but everyone likes their grandmother. It's just a fact. Right. And that would resonate. So that it was a simple bar that if we are doing anything that you wouldn't want your grandmother to have, get, or be part of, we won't do it. And that actually passed a lot of tests and caused us not to do certain things that might otherwise been easily complicated. The other one is, I want this to sound meaningful, so it's not just rhetorical. As I retired from the bank, I was on a panel for the Carlson School of Business at University of Minnesota with 2 other retiring CEOs, and they asked us, what's the one thing you would tell your 30-year-old self as a leader that you now know? I'd never been asked that question, and the response came directly to me that it was my intuition that I should have trusted stronger and longer when I was in my earlier stages. When you're young, you let the facts include your intuition and your gut, and then the facts often win. As you get older, you start to trust your intuition more because it's proven to be a good bellwether. And my intuition actually didn't get better over time. I just trusted it more. So my best leadership trait would be to follow your instincts and follow your strong gut when it comes to how things should be done or what's the right answer. Listen from the general counsel's office, listen to the HR experts, listen to whomever, but then let that last introduction of experience come back into play and make the right decision. The more traditional answer, which isn't going to be as interesting, but it's right, and that is hire people that you want to be leading on their own. Hire people that you don't need to lead. Hire them with a sense that there's a loose federation of senior leaders that will work together for the good of the organization, but hire strong leaders who can lead their own area without you needing to lead it for them. And you will be undoubtedly a stronger group, but only bring in the people who are willing to be part of the team when they need to be, or you've lost the best of both worlds. So hire the right people with the intent to let them do what they need to do, expect them to be part of the team, but allow them to lead. And allow them to lead and make mistakes, but more often they'll make remarkable outcomes come to true that you would otherwise never have choreographed.
So your legacy at the bank, your legacy for Make-A-Wish, what do you want to be known on this planet and for the world?
We didn't choreograph this. I never had a goodbye moment at the bank because I didn't believe in that. Mm-hmm. And I never answered the question on legacy. I just literally wasn't raised to think of it that way. What I would like to leave behind is a sustainable, repeatable, predictable path. Mm-hmm. And at the bank, which is remarkably strong, I would like to think that their current strength has to do with the fact that we set up a sustainable model of high quality, high ethics, and high success. At Make-A-Wish, because of the story you allowed me to tell in the beginning, Janis, if we can get to all the eligible children, if we can create a sustainable core of 80,000 volunteers and 3 times as many individual and corporate sponsors who all feel good about helping children's lives be that much better and create it to be repeatable over the years forward, that will have been worthwhile. Because at 40 years old, Make-A-Wish is young. Our founder is still around. The mother of our first wish is very active in the organization. You don't get that too often.
Amazing.
And so it's important that the story is told with the intent to be told for many, many years forward. And the sustainability of anything, I think, is your best legacy if in hindsight, it appears to have been one of the contributions you made to the fulfillment of whatever the mission was.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have passed the torch to a very strong successor in Andy Cesare. You do have a very strong legacy there at U.S. Bank with phenomenal leaders.
Right.
So that's
and you put some of them there.
I did. It was my pleasure and my honor. So you have passed the torch there, and that is all very strong. And now you're doing that again at Make-A-Wish. How can the audience contribute and make a difference to Make-A-Wish if they wanted to do it in their local community? Do they go to a website? How do we participate?
They can volunteer, first of all, and they can do that by going to the website, put in Make-A-Wish. It'll bring up the local chapter, one of 60, and there's many ways to activate. More importantly, I would love them to consider giving, because I can promise you that the money will go directly. We're a very highly rated organization, so the money is well cared for. It'll go directly to the wish of the child that we need to grant. If you want to know about the wish and follow that journey, you can. If it's good enough for you to know that your money unrestricted goes to wishes and we can keep you connected to the organization, that's good too. But more importantly, I want people to believe that they can actually do something right now with the wealth that they have earned that will change a life immediately. We're changing the organization from being a little more, it's been very polite. We're going to be a little more bold. We have kids right now where wishes are waiting. They're not funded. I need people to believe that that's a good thing because they can now help solve that and they can help that wish come true immediately. I also want them to believe that they're part of an organization of Americans who believe philanthropy is by far one of the best ways to use your wealth and to leave your mark. America is the most philanthropic, second to the Netherlands, most philanthropic country of anywhere in the world. The millennials like to see and touch and feel the impact before they'll give their money. People of my generation are happy to give the money and trust the impact is there. We need to be that for everyone. And Make-A-Wish can provide all versions of that along the path. But for you to know, at the bank, I remember the most wealthy customers we had were in a special group called Ascent. And we would ask them, routinely, what is it they want to do with their wealth? And over 50% of the time, the answer was, I'm not exactly sure. What do you think? Now, that's amazing, right? Because people with wealth, you would think, have a plan for it. And then those who have a plan are still interested in knowing what could be a better plan. And so places like Make-A-Wish, places like any not-for-profit, They're desperate for your support, not because they're trying to win anything, not because there's a share or stockholders on the other side. It's because their mission needs that support. It's the core fabric of that community. So if they can find a way to part with some of their financial success and put it in a place where they know the immediate impact will be immediate and the care of those funds will be at the highest level, that would be what I would hope people would have. And whether they're listening now or later, I'd like them to have a more keen ear to say, I've heard of Make-A-Wish. I think I know someone who might be affiliated. I think I know someone I can help, and actually act on those impulses, because if it isn't us, it doesn't matter to me where you give. Find part of this wonderful organization called America. Bring the charities to the bear. Let them become one of the reasons you're proud to be in this country. And don't let politics or tax rates or some of the nuisance things that get in the way that cause us to lose our focus, get in the way of doing what's right. Because there are people out there we'll never meet for whatever reason, and they're counting on us. And maybe, just maybe, opportunities to engage when you least expect it will change your life.
Thank you, Richard. You know, it's so true, because I have a girlfriend who's single, and she has some money, not a lot, but she said, I don't know where to give. And there's so many people like that, and they do want to make an impact.
Yes.
And it is a privilege to give. And so it's all about America lifting up others as opposed to pulling down.
Right.
Right?
You think of anything more appropriate than that now?
We want to give. We want to pull everybody up, whether it be the YMCA, whether it be Make-A-Wish, whatever it is, we want to give back. And that's the strength of America, right?
That's right. That's right. And Janis, I want to close with this because you're giving me a lot of permissions here. It's not about charity as it relates to sponsorship. It's about brand. Mm-hmm. And so when I go meeting with these organizations I mentioned earlier, I've already done a study of thousands of consumers and asked them how they feel about that particular brand. And then we run them through a number of questions to find out that their impression of that brand goes sky high, but ours is at the highest of our category. And so when I go in and speak with Company X and ask them to consider supporting Make-A-Wish, I don't ask for the foundation. I don't ask if they like kids. I don't ask if they're into the medicine. Ask them if they want their brand to be at the highest of all perspectives. And when we show them what Make-A-Wish and their brand do and activate together, it's good business doing well. And that's the really goal that we have here, is to make even businesses feel like they can be a part of this.
Well, during this holiday season, we want to help all children, obviously, right?
Do.
And certainly those that are critically ill but have the opportunity to live into adulthood. So Richard
Perfectly
Davis,
said.
you know, from being a phenomenal banker to now making children's wishes come true. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you to my audience and for tuning in for this remarkable conversation with Richard Davis. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or visit our website at ellengroup.com. Stay tuned for more exciting episodes of Leadership Reimagined, Game-Changing Conversations. Richard Davis, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Janis. It's an honor. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.